Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Gio Darter, founder of Copperbridge Foundation. Welcome to our fifth online 10 by 10 series on Cuban dance. Tonight we are celebrating 10 years of Copperbridge with this particular online presentation of Cuban contemporary art here and now. We are very happy to be able to share with you so many of these wonderful events that we've been working on for the last 10 years. And tonight, thanks to the cooperation of the Swiss Embassy of Cuba, the Joyce Theater, Hedwig Dance, Miami-Dade College, and the Miami Light Project, including FUNDarte, we're able to bring you a fantastic panel discussion. With participating collaboration with On Cuba, AIA Miami, MWDA, Gypsy Travel, and Dynamic Art, with the help of our media sponsors, Art Daily. We're proud always to be able to do this, especially tonight for you. Our moderator tonight is Ross from the Joyce Theater, and our community partners, Hedwig Dance, and also Miami-Dade Community College. So with that said, I also now want to introduce you to a very dear friend of mine and collaborator here in Miami of our cultural exchanges, Beth Boone. Beth Boone is the artistic director of the Miami Light Project. Since 1998, her role as artistic and executive director of the Miami Light Project, Beth has distinguished herself as the leader in Miami's cultural community. She has developed critically acclaimed artistic programs that have asserted the organization as one of the leading cultural institutions in South Florida. So with that said, I'm so proud to welcome our dear collaborator, Beth Boone from the Miami Light Project. Hello, Beth.
Thanks, Gio. Nice to be here. Hi, everyone. Well, so I feel kind of like we had a dress rehearsal last night. You know, so I feel a little more eased into our conversation tonight, but I'm really happy to be here with so many colleagues that I know and to see new names, and I hope I get to connect with some of you offline as well. I thought that I would Gio asked me specifically to talk about collaboration and partnership and how that is important in our work, in particular in cultural exchange with Cuba. And as I said yesterday, collaboration is really one of the founding elements of our organization. We wouldn't be able to do anything that we do if we didn't collaborate with artists, with other cultural organizations, with educational institutions, and with the community that we really like to have an impact on. So one of my dear partners and friends who, I don't know if Ever Chavez, who's the founder of FUNDarte, is online with us tonight or not, but I'll talk a little bit about the work that we do together with regard to cultural exchange in Cuba. But I wanted to mention to people, and it struck me, Ross, when we were talking a bit last night just about our various connections to Cuba, how we all kind of got connected, that there was a trip that occurred. It was a cultural exchange trip that occurred 20 years ago next month. I'll never forget that. In fact, we did not know who the president of the United States was when we went, because it was the year of the dangling chads in Florida. And so that was when that trip took place. And it was, I realized, I mean, I've always known this personally, but to think about the ways in which the Joyce Theater connected to Cuba on that fateful trip, as did my organization and many other organizations, I was really struck by the power of partnership, cultural exchange, collaboration, and the way it can just steer you in a direction for the rest of your personal or professional life. So on that trip were many great colleagues from cultural organizations around the country. Linda Shelton of the Joyce was one of my colleagues on that trip. We had many appropriately rum-filled nights talking about brilliant work that we had seen during the day. We were there for 10 days. We saw about 6 companies a day. We went throughout the country, and never in my life have I had a more impactful experience of cultural immersion. And I have traveled to a lot of places and on many different junkets, you know, as it were. But it really, that trip changed my life. And I continued to go back many, many times in these 20 years. I think I've been to Cuba 100 times. And in 2008, for a variety of reasons, I connected with my colleague Ever Chavez about establishing a music program called Global Cuba Fest, which we present every single year in the spring, and we bring the best musicians from Cuba and around the world, who are musicians who are Cuban, who live around the world and who live in Cuba, and bring them to Miami for performances on stages large and small. And then over the years, we began to fold in other disciplines. So we have presented dance and theater and film, visual art, spoken word through this program. And so when Gio approached me, I don't remember, I was trying to remember what year it was. Was it 5 years ago, Gio, I think, to present Malpaso at the Lightbox? It felt just like a perfect opportunity. Of course, we jumped at the chance. We were thrilled. I had only recently come to know the company, but we had a lot of good energy that has been danced on our dance floor with many artists and of course Cuban artists. And I wanted to mention DanzAbierta was one of the first companies that I saw, that now MiCompañía. It was one of the first companies that I saw when I went to Cuba on that first trip. And in my life, I have never forgotten Coro Perpetuo. That performance sort of ripped my heart out and I don't know, just connected me to the country forever. So that's just a little bit about the work that we have done. Our partners are everything to us. And I'm really proud to be associated with the Copperbridge Foundation. And I think the work that they do is great. And it's great to see all of you here. I look forward to hearing everything that you have to say about your work.
Thank you, Beth. You're absolutely right. Collaboration is everything. And I personally rather always be behind the screen, as you know, being the producer and the facilitator more than being the actual presenter. But I also recognize the hard work that goes into these collaborations. And in this case of 10 by 10, which is again celebrating our 10-year anniversary of dialogue through the arts and focusing on all aspects of art, I must say that with the work with Cuba, because we don't just work with Cuba, we work with all of Latin America and the Caribbean, but I've had the opportunity to find and focus on some of the best talents in Cuba. And it just so happens that many of these programs that we have spotlighted have actually come in, I would say, co-sponsor or collaboration with the next person I'm going to mention. And it just so happens that we share I don't know if it's good taste but we actually share many of the same projects together. And in this case, I want to thank the Swiss Embassy of Cuba and Jamaica for participating and partnering up with us for this 10 by 10 series, which is so important for Copperbridge. And again, it's people like, or organizations like the Swiss Embassy, Miami Light, Retazos, Hedwig, that make it important for us, because we always are about uniting and working as one. So again, Copperbridge's success has been just that, collaborating. So with that said, I want to welcome tonight what I consider a good friend, but also the Counselor of Economic, Political, and Cultural Affairs of the Embassy of Switzerland in Cuba and Jamaica, Lorenzo Suarez, who again has worked hard with us to make sure that this program is accessible from Cuba to all. So with that said, I want to welcome Lorenzo, please. Lorenzo, saludos.
Estás en mute.
Can you guys hear us?
Yes.
Thank you, Gio, for your kind words. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Let me first start by saying that on behalf of the Swiss Embassy, we're very happy to participate in these events. Very happy to be co-hosting some of the Cuban panelists. Susana Post with me here tonight in my residence. I've only come to this part of the world a year ago, approximately, after a very long mission in sub-Saharan Africa. And this short time, however, has been enough for me to come and get acquainted with some of the great projects that the Copperbridge Foundation has been funding here in Cuba, but also beyond, some of which, as Gio has mentioned, some of these projects have been co-funded together with the embassy here. For those of you who do not know the Swiss Embassy here in Cuba, I'll just say a few words mentioning that basically the Swiss government has been supporting the Cuban people for over 2 decades now. 1997 was the beginning of our cooperation program here. We have been working in many different fields through the so-called Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, which is, if you will, the equivalent of USAID for the Swiss government. As of today here in Cuba, we are active in about 60% of the districts and municipalities of the country in fields such as humanitarian aid, civic participation, the development of local institutions, and for that we've been working with partners all across the board, from NGOs to the government of Cuba. We've also been active in recent years in fields such as sustainable organic agriculture, which is very important for Cuba, a country which still imports a very big share of its food consumption. We've been active in clean energy, trying to promote cleaner energy production in country, public health as well, obviously a very hot topic today, where the fight against COVID-19 has taken a lot of our energy, and a fight for which, thanks God, the Cuban government has actually had very good results so far. But we shouldn't just call it a day, because as we've seen it in my own country, we thought it was okay, and we had a second wave, which was the worst of all. Last but not least, I'll mention that we've been supporting very actively the creative sector here in Cuba through a bilateral cultural program in recent years that has engaged with many partners, many themes, including most of the themes of these series of online events. In the field of dance, and it's the reason I'm here tonight, we've also been active and we've supported also many things in different ways, but I'll just mention that the latest of the dance or contemporary dance collaborations we've had was with MiCompañía, whose director is sitting next to me tonight, Susana. And with her, we've been funding 2 very interesting productions or creations, one of which was launched last year and one of which hopefully, COVID allowing, will be launched next year. So with these considerations in mind, it's my pleasure to introduce now the moderator of today's session, Ross LeClair. Mr. LeClair has been working with the Joyce Theater for several years now, since 2016, if I'm not mistaken. He's been the producer of that theater, an institution with which he produced works of internationally acclaimed dance artists, notably Malpaso Dance Company, but also many others beyond Cuba. Mr. LeClair has graduated from New York University, having degrees both in dance and in journalism. And I'm truly very thankful to him for having teamed up with us tonight and having accepted to moderate the entire event tonight. So without further ado, thank you very much, Gio, for your words. Congratulations on the series of events, which despite technical hurdles, I'm sure will be a very big success. And over to you, Ross, for the moderation tonight. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And thank you, Lorenzo, for that introduction. Gio, again, I'll just say thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be able to talk with artists about their work. It's one of the best parts of my job. So thank you for this opportunity. And again, congratulations on your first 10 years. I'll share first a little bit about the Joyce Theater. For anyone who doesn't know, we are a 500-seat theater based in New York City. And we present annually in normal times, a 48-week season of dance. For the most part, companies are performing 1 week-long engagements, although sometimes they run 2 or 3. So that means we have a lot of space in our season for a variety of dance styles, companies, countries represented. And that's something that we really take a lot of pride in, that we're a home for dance for New York-based dance companies, but also companies all around the world, and really get to share with our audience so many different styles and companies from around the world. As Beth mentioned, the Joyce's relationship with Cuba and the dance community there started in the year 2000 on that trip. My boss, Linda Shelton, our executive director, was on that trip, and came back and just really felt such a deep connection to the artists there, which I think so many of us have also felt. And so really that just started a long trajectory of presenting dance companies from Cuba to come perform on the Joyce stage. We also have been bringing Joyce audience members and patrons down to Cuba to sort of have a similar experience, traveling around, usually just in Havana, but sometimes beyond. So we're trying to facilitate, bringing people down to experience the work there. And then also bringing choreographers from the US and around the world to work and to teach in Cuba as well. So really looking for so many different avenues that we can facilitate exchange between the dance community in Cuba and dancers around the world. So I'm just very lucky that the Joyce had that relationship, and all that work had already started before I arrived. And so when I joined in 2016, I was really able to pick that up. And that's been a real treat and a highlight for me in my career. So next I'm going to introduce Copperbridge's community partner who's with us tonight, who will also be asking a few questions in the conversation, Jan Bartosik. Jan is a choreographer based in Chicago. Her company is called Hedwig Dances. I'm not going to say too much more because Jan will take it from here.
Thank you, Ross, for your introduction, and congratulations to Gio Darter and Copperbridge on your 10th anniversary. Kudos to you, Gio, for your work in keeping communications and conversations flowing, especially in this time of COVID. And yeah, it's just really great what you're doing. And thank you so much for inviting me to participate. It means a lot to me. Hello to Isabel and to Susanna. It's great to see you again. I'm Jan Bartosik. I'm the founder and artistic director of Hedwig Dances, a contemporary dance theater company. And yes, we're based in Chicago, where we are in residence at the Ruth Page Center for the Arts. A lot of people ask me where the name comes from. The company is named after my grandmother. And this year, Hedwig Dances celebrates its 35th anniversary. Hedwig Dances explores cultures and ideas. We work with a wide range of world-class artists across disciplines and media to produce dance that is visually exciting and imagistic, has original music and movement, and inspires connection. Throughout our history, we've had a strong presence of dancers from other countries. And in the past 18 years, many of our dancers have come from Cuba. In 2002, Maria Gutierrez Ramos, who's currently artistic associate, and her husband, Victor Alexander, who choreographs for the company and now is head of the Ruth Page Company School of Dance. They were both former principal dancers with Danza Contemporánea, the National Contemporary Dance Company of Cuba. And they moved to Chicago, knocked on my door, and the rest has been history with our company. Other Cuban dancers followed them, including Mariah's sister, Jessie Gutierrez, among many others. In 2011, I became aware that it was possible to travel to Cuba on specialized person-to-person trips. I wanted to learn about Cuban dance, meet the Havana dance community, meet my company dancers' families, and see if I could develop a dance partnership or exchange. That year, I began designing a tour with Mariah and Victor that focused on dance as a means to learn about Cuban culture. We call our program Touch Tours. For 4 years running, from 2012 to 2015, Hedwig Dances traveled to Cuba through a partnership with Copperbridge and the Evanston-based Art Encounter. And I know, Ellen, you're out there tonight. Ellen Kammerling and Joanna Pinsky were also very important. They led our trips the first several years and helped us get our foot in the door in Cuba. A big shout out to you both. More recently, Hedwig returned to Cuba with Copperbridge in 2019. Altogether, we've taken over 100 people to Cuba on our Touch Tours. Our Touch Tour guests have been exposed to the finest Cuban contemporary dance companies, including Malpaso, MiCompañía, Retazos, and Narciso Medina, among many, many others. I'd been curious for some time about the distinctive quality of professional Cuban dancers. The Cuban dance program immerses students in rigorous training at the young age of 10. This training includes daily classes in ballet, modern, and Afro-Cuban dance, and incorporates improvisation, composition, and many performance opportunities, so that by the age of 18, students are ready to begin their professional careers. As a result of our program, Hedwig Dances set up an international collaboration with DanzAbierta, predecessor to MiCompañía. Hedwig Dances was well matched with DanzAbierta because we were similar in size and both very theatrical in our own approach to dance creation. In June 2013, with the support of Copperbridge and Art Encounter, Hedwig presented DanzAbierta to Chicago for the first time. For 2 magical evenings, Hedwig and DanzAbierta, MiCompañía, shared the stage at the Athenaeum Theater, where each company performed its own work. DanzAbierta, MiCompañía performed Showroom, and Hedwig premiered Ascendance. It was a very special evening for both of our companies. As a sidebar, Hedwig is streaming Ascendance this week. It's a free event and features many of the Cuban dancers in our company who have made their home in Chicago, and culminates in a discussion about the collaborating artists on Sunday, November 22nd. And we have a registration up on the chat now. The 2013 performance was a prelude to the new collaboration that Hedwig was developing with DanzAbierta, MiCompañía. Our shared collaborative work would be an evening-length dance choreographed together around a common theme. Because communications were challenging, and very, very challenging, we needed to set up guidelines that our companies could work from independent of one another. We decided to explore cyclical time, the seasons of life, in 2 different climates and cultures. We structured the project as 2 interlocking dances, Trade Winds, choreographed by me, and Eras de Cambio by Susana. The dance would unfold in a series of episodes following the course of the seasons, starting with fall and ending with summer, and would be a call and response between our 2 companies. Hedwig performed primarily on one side of the stage, while MiCompañía, DanzAbierta, would dance on the other. Chicago and Havana were woven into the structure of the dance through projected video segments by Daniel Kuhlman, Nadia Osenko, and Claudio Perot, with original music by Emmy Alfonso and sound design by Erica Ricketts. To work all of this out, we used every possible opportunity for in-person meetings. Mariah Gutierrez and I traveled to Havana, and we also traveled all the way to Quebec to see Susana and her company perform and try and work out the details of our project. In the meantime, Hedwig Dances applied for and received an International Connections Fund grant from the MacArthur Foundation and a National Performance Network funding to underwrite our collaborative project. And we also applied for and received the requisite license and visas to perform in Cuba. It all came together on October 9th, 2014, when Hedwig Dances and DanzAbierta premiered Tradewinds Eres de Cambio in a co-presentation with Lynx Hall and the Dance Center of Columbia College in Chicago. We performed it again in Havana at the National Theater, Sala Avenida, on January 31st, 2015, before 2,000 audience members. Gio tirelessly promoted the event in his signature style. Thank you, Gio, supporting both companies in our endeavor. Tradewinds Eres de Cambio was the culmination of more than 2-year international collaboration between Hedwig and MiCompañía, the first of its kind. The culmination of Tradewinds Eres de Cambio is the moment in the dance when the two companies broke the literal and metaphoric barrier and danced together. It was one of the most difficult moments to work on choreographically. We only had a week of rehearsal prior to setting that up, and the pressure was on. Our two ideas had to come together. But when we performed it before audiences, they responded both enthusiastically and emotionally to the work. So now I'd like to please roll the trailer for Tradewinds Eres de Cambio. Yeah, it's nice to see it again. Gio just asked me to talk a little bit about the importance of collaboration. It creates a physical works that are both have multiple perspectives on an idea. And it helps us explore and exchange choreographic and theatrical ideas. Also trains our dancers in new movement forms and exposes our audiences to new ideas. So these are some of the outcomes of our collaboration. And I just want to say it was really an important event in my life, a very memorable and important event. Thank you all.
Thanks. All right, I think that's back to me now. So I'm going to introduce our panelists for this evening. I'm going to do so briefly because I think you'll learn a lot more from hearing from them than you will from me. And then after that, we'll get started with questions. And also, as you're listening, if anyone out there has a question that they'd like to ask, feel free to write it in the chat. And as the conversation goes on, I'll mix some in and get to a few at the end as well. So first, I'm going to introduce Susana Pos. Susana was born in Spain, trained in the US, and then ultimately settled in Havana. She worked as a dancer and then teacher, choreographer, and ultimately director of DanzAbierta. And then in 2018, she founded her own company called MiCompañía. So with that, I think we have a short clip to play of Susana's work. Next, I will introduce Isabel Bustos. Isabel is a director and choreographer based in Havana. She founded her company Retazos Dance Theater in 1987. And also joining is her son, Miguel Azque, who is a choreographer. He makes work for Retazos as well, but he's currently based in Sweden, where he's the artistic director of a company called Memory Wax. So now we have a brief clip from Retazos. Great. So with that, I will get started with my questions for the panelists. And again, if you have any that come into your mind along the way as you're listening, feel free to pop them in the chat. And we'll get to as many as we can throughout the next hour. So I think some of you were here last night, and one thing I think may have been helpful to frame the conversation is we're talking about Cuban contemporary dance. And that's not just one thing. Of course, there can't just be one definition to that, but I think there are certain foundations and traditions that are underlying contemporary Cuban dance. And so I think it would be helpful to sort of give some definition to that. So maybe I'll start with Susanna. If you could tell us, what are the techniques and the traditions that you think feed into contemporary Cuban dance? What are those source materials?
Hi, everybody. I think in Cuba, something happened, something very special. They have a very hard traditional dance from Africa, as you know, and then they have the influence of American modern dance, and you know, I think they create a mix, a very special mix, and they have a Cuban technique that is very special because you can find this special way of move in another country. Did you hear me? Sí, me oyen? ¿Tú crees que sí? Yeah, that is the special thing I think of the Cuban dancers. They learn in the art school this technique, this special technique, and then is very strong. They dance classic. They learn classic ballet at the same time that they learn folklorical of African movements, and this makes I think that, ¿cómo se dice? Que les da como un movimiento especial.
That gives them a special,
yeah, and a special way to move. Exactly. Sorry, my English. Okay.
No, that was great. I think it's just kind of helpful to set the scene a little bit and identify that there are you know, the American modern, there's some ballet, and there's folkloric elements all coming together to feed contemporary Cuban dance. I think that's just a good starting point for everyone. Something else I thought was really interesting as I was just introducing everyone, and including Jan, is the presence of theater in dance. I mean, it's right there in your title, Isabel, Retazos Dance Theater. So I'm wondering if you can tell us how you think theater plays a role in your work, and where that the boundary between dance and theater is or isn't.
Bueno, estaba hablando ahora mismo con Andrés, mi compañero de trabajo, que Retazos, danza teatro Retazos, apareció por primera vez porque la directora del teatro, ¿cómo se llama el teatro? El teatro de Raquel Revueltas, en Teatro Estudio, cuando ella era directora de este teatro, ella me dice, quiero hacer una audición de tu trabajo y quiero saber cómo tú trabajas, a ver si es posible que tú hagas unas funciones aquí y si yo te puedo permitir que tú trabajes de noche en nuestro espacio.
Isabel started actually being asked to audition for Raquel Revueltas in her theater to see if the possibility of her being able to perform there in the evening, rehearse. And so, and it was at a theater, Raquel Revueltas Theater. So that's sort of the impetus of how that came about, the theatricality and the theater aspect of it.
Para hacerlo más rápido, en ese momento, hubo un momento en que no se había terminado la función y ella se levanta y se va. Era la directora de Teatro Estudio en aquel momento. Bueno, todos nos quedamos sorprendidos, finalizamos la función y yo fui a verla. Cuando fui a verla me dice, mira Isabel, yo dije, ella no me va a dejar trabajar aquí, por supuesto me va a decir que busque otro lugar. Me dice, mira, lo que tú haces es danza teatro. Tiene mucha relación con lo que hace la Pina Bausch, con lo que tú haces. Yo no conocía en ese momento a la Pina Bausch. Me dice, bueno, yo te voy a dar algunos videos para que tú la conozcas. Pero tiene mucha relación y para mí es un honor, es un gusto que tú trabajes en mi teatro y tienes que entender que lo que tú haces es danza teatro. Y bueno, después yo empecé a indagar sobre muchas compañías y sobre todo también teatrales, a ver qué relación podía haber al respecto. Y pues sí, realmente hay gran importancia, gran valor en el sentido de que es danza teatro. Yo me di cuenta después, no antes. Para mí era Retazos nada más.
So when she started her company and she had this audition and she was on stage, the director of Teatro Estudio got up and left before the end of the performance. And so then Isabel went to her home and said, I'm so sorry, thinking, that she was gonna not work there anymore. And she said, no, I just wanted to explain to you that what you do is actually called dance theater. The dance theater it came from Isabel, but the coin of the name came from the director of Teatro Estudio. And so Isabel started studying actually companies that did specifically dance theater and also theatrical companies. And so that's where it was born from. It was really her natural tendency, which was later coined dance theater.
Algunas influencias, por ejemplo, para mí Tarkovsky, el ruso, es muy importante. Hay, no sé, el cineasta sueco, Bergman, para mí es importante. O sea, de alguna manera mi relación con la danza viene más bien por el teatro que por la danza pura, por el movimiento puro. Yo sé que hay otras compañías que trabajan de esa manera y es muy loable también, ¿no? Pero mi forma de pensar, de sentir y de hacer la danza es un poco diferente.
So she's been influenced by great Russian choreographers and the like, and companies, and even by filmmakers like Bergman. And she feels great influence by that. And so for her pieces are not just pure dance, but theater. And so that's how she expresses her theaters through dance.
Gracias.
Gracias, Isabel.
Great. I'm actually going to toss it over to Jan, who I think has a question.
Yes, I have a question both for Susanna and Isabel, and it has to do with cultural influences. I know that each of you were born outside of Cuba, Susanna in Spain, and Isabel, I believe you were born in Ecuador. Is that right? But anyway, the question has to do with your formation was in your place of birth where you grew up. You came to Cuba, and then now you've traveled to other places. So it's a dual question. How did your original country influence your dance, and what did you bring to Cuban dance? And then now, as you're traveling out into the world, how has your work then changed again? I'm just curious about your journey from your original home to Cuba and then out into the world.
I'm going to do as Isabel, because I speak very fast, and then Lorenzo is going to translate me, okay?
I'll try.
I got it, okay. Yo vengo de Barcelona.
I come from Barcelona.
La danza en Barcelona no tiene un sentido de país.
And dance in Barcelona doesn't have a meaning of country.
De España, Italia.
In terms of Spain, Italy, etc.
En mi formación como bailarina, la danza en Europa era un lenguaje único.
My training as a dancer in Europe was a unique language.
Las fronteras dentro de Europa eran bastante invisibles en términos de arte y danza, ¿no?
So the borders within Europe were quite invisible in terms of the arts.
Pero sí estaban quizás influidos sobre todo por el norte de Europa. La danza teatro, como dice Isabel, ¿no? Gente como Pina, como Wim van der Keibus, como Sascha Valls.
So
la danza alemana. Yo sabía que iba a correr mucho, sorry. Bueno, que la influencia de la danza del norte de Europa, de la danza alemana y la danza teatro, un lenguaje influido por el cine.
So the influence of German dance was
el cine, el teatro.
Coming from cinema, theater.
Y cuando llego a Cuba,
and when I arrived in Cuba,
siento que el cuerpo habla.
I felt that the body speaks.
Que hay algo como más, digamos, hay un lenguaje, yo pienso, mucho más físico.
I felt that there was a language which was much more physical.
Y que quizás este lenguaje, digamos, un poco más intelectual.
And this language may be much more of an intellectual language.
Era muy interesante introducirlo a Cuba, ¿no?
It's very interesting to be introduced in Cuba.
Recordemos que cuando yo llego a Cuba hace más de 20 años.
And I recall that when I arrived in Cuba more than 20 years ago.
Y ya Gio estaba por allí.
And Gio was already there. Because you're all Gio, I didn't realize.
Sí, habían muchos problemas de comunicación entre Cuba y el resto del mundo.
There was a lot of communication problems between Cuba and the rest of the world. Still true, by the way.
Así que yo vengo a poder quizás entregar todo lo que yo soy, lo que puedo dar.
So I'm coming here to offer what I am and whatever I can give.
Y a recibir igual de Cuba,
and to receive,
del lenguaje corporal cubano, de la fisicalidad.
And to receive in the same way from Cuba, from Cuba's body language and physicality.
Pero el hecho de vivir muchos años en Cuba ha ido transformando todo esto que yo soy y lo que es la danza que yo hago.
So, but the fact that I've been living here a long time has been transforming my approach and the dance that I do.
Yo me enamoré de Cuba y en Cuba
I fell in love with Cuba and in Cuba.
Descubrí Cuba.
Discovered Cuba.
Y ahora puedo hablar casi como una cubana.
And now I can speak almost like a Cuban.
Eso es lo que se ha transformado en mí como artista.
That's what's changed in me as an artist.
Yo vine para traer cosas
I came to bring in things
Después recibí mucho de este país,
Then
y
I've received a lot from this country,
sobre todo de los cubanos.
mostly from Cuban people.
Y ahora siento que cuando salgo de las fronteras de Cuba,
And now I feel that when I come out of Cuba's borders,
me muevo y danzo y veo la danza como algo nuevo.
I move and I dance and I see dance as something new.
Cuando yo llegué era prácticamente imposible hacer un intercambio entre compañías de fuera de Cuba y las cubanas.
When I first arrived, it was almost impossible to do any sort of exchange between companies from here and from abroad.
Y creo que no solamente soy yo o Isabel o las mujeres valientes, que yo creo que estamos haciendo una labor sin pausa en la danza.
And I think women like me or like Isabel are doing very important work without stopping. In
Mujeres
dance.
valientes.
Brave women such as me and Isabel are doing this work in Cuban dance.
Y de todas maneras yo no pretendo hacer una danza cubana para nada.
I don't pretend to be doing any Cuban dance at all.
Pero efectivamente hablo y me gusta hablar de lo que siento y de lo que pasa a mi alrededor.
But I do like to speak and do things about what's happening around.
Y muchas veces me doy cuenta de lo cubana o de lo cubano que es mi trabajo cuando me voy fuera.
And often I realize how Cuban my work is when I travel abroad.
Simplemente porque vivo aquí y o lo que me interesa a mí es hablar de la realidad. Y la realidad es lo que sucede a mi alrededor.
And that's because I live here, and what's interesting for me is to talk about reality, and reality is what's happening around me.
Cada intercambio, cada colaboración y cada proyecto en los que he estado involucrado con todas las personas que están aquí.
So each exchange, each collaboration, each project that I've been involved in with all the people that are here tonight.
Sobre todo siento que han hecho agrandar las capacidades de mis bailarines.
So these things have contributed to expand the capacities of my dancers.
Porque la danza es la vida y cuanto más se vive y más se aprende, más rica es.
Because dance is life, and the more you dance and the more you live, the richer your dance.
Quisiera explicar un poquito más sobre Retazos, que yo lo fundé en el 87, o sea que ya es bastante tiempo, como ustedes lo habían dicho. Y a partir de allí, bueno, he creado muchísimas obras y también mi hijo ha creado cosas muy interesantes. Él es cubano-sueco, es Miguel Azcue, que ustedes lo vieron hace un rato, y hay obras de él que se han mostrado. Donde habla un poco de la sociedad en la cual él está viviendo. Trabaja de una manera diferente y tiene su propia personalidad, que para mí es muy interesante porque son conceptos diferentes los que se usan en el teatro. Yo soy mucho más emocional, mucho más aquí y ahora, y él es mucho más intelectual que yo. Pero de todas maneras, siempre hay un punto en común en que en algún momento nos tocamos, nos hablamos. Pero al mismo tiempo, como dice Susana, que somos guerreras y luchadoras, yo he hecho... ¿Quieren que yo pare? ¿Paro?
Sí.
Sí. Voy a traducir muy rápidamente, quizás no completamente. Isabel was saying that her company's been around since the mid 80s, and as we mentioned previously in Ross's introduction, but she's from Chile, by the way, Jan. Also, her son, who is Dutch, who's joining us this evening, has a very different way of dance. So it's very interesting to her. Her dance comes from a very different place. It's more emotional, it's more theatrical, And her son's, who is a Cuban Dutchman, choreographer living abroad, his is more intellectual and cerebral. And so for her, it's a very interesting difference that has come about from, being in Cuba and then bringing that Cubanness to another country.
That said, I'd like to hear a little bit about Miguel because
Yeah.
Sí,
Bueno.
¿me oyen?
Y ahora sí.
Ya. Hola Gio, bueno, gracias por invitarme. Felicidades con el aniversario 10 de Copperbridge. Congratulations.
thank you.
And yeah, it was fun to talk about me from my mother. And one correction, I was born in Cuba and I live in Sweden. So I'm not Dutch. In any case, Swedish, Cuban Swedish, yeah.
Sorry,
And yeah, it was an interesting question because the original question was, what did they bring to Cuba, right? As foreigners coming to Cuba. So it's not really my situation, it's a bit the other way around. I was born in Cuba and I left from an early age. And I've been going all over the world. First following my mother to Mexico, then I went to the US, studied in the US, then I went to Norway and I ended up in Sweden. So what is it, what I do? I started to think, and I agree with Susana. You are what you have around. You express what you have around, what your life is about. And your life is about what you do every day, right? And say that, I would think that a lot of what I do is actually the reflection of that traveling so much and being Cuban, but not having the roots of a Cuban, but being an immigrant all my life. So I would say my work reflects that that situation. Yeah, sorry, I lost the track of a little bit of what I was saying, but yeah, it is interesting. When I go to Cuba, in a way, I feel foreign because I was born there, but then when I go there, I'm a little bit as a tourist, and I say, what is Cuban in my work? And it's very difficult to actually answer to that question. I keep asking myself that, but there is certainly an attraction, this sensuality, this powerful desire for living. I think somehow, even though my work is very intellectual, still there's something there that I take with me from Cuba. Yeah, that's what I can say now.
I'd like to say just quickly before we move on that referring to both Retazos and MiCompañía, I've had the pleasure of going and seeing the choreography done for first Showroom, which blew me away. And the raw emotion of her pieces along with Retazos is the reason why I fell in love with contemporary dance, I must say. And the reason why I said this must be shown outside of the country. And again, you mentioned about what is happening around. Well, when I see your works, it engulfs me, it really does. And again, me who does not know much about dance, when I receive that, I know that the rest of the world would feel the same. And again, I think you both share that when it comes to your choreography, the power of emotion that you give through your choreography.
Thought it would be interesting to hear from Jan, sort of the answer to her own question. So Jan, if you want to let us know.
Well, I've been really influenced by my travels, but also by the travels to me of the Cuban dancers, because I've had so many in my company, and how they've influenced me in my work, how they grow up with this identity of being a dancer. And in the US, people don't recognize dance in the same way. Does not have the same standing as it does in Cuba. In Cuba, dancers they're artists. They're special. You know, they're held in awe So I think that it's helped me sort of, I sort of feel like I found my people, you know, I mean, and I would say the same thing about traveling to other places and working with people in other, who are doing the same thing that you are in their own way in other countries, is sort of this connection to something bigger than you and your place. You start to feel connected to something much larger than yourself. And I think that's very, very important. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks. Sort of still on that same topic, I'd love to hear, Susanna, we heard so much about your collaboration with Jan in Jan's introduction, but I'd love to hear from your point of view, the value of that collaboration and what did you take away from that after completing the exchange?
Well, cuando conocí a Jan,
When I met Jan,
todo fue muy fácil.
everything was very easy.
Porque pienso que Jan es una persona muy parecida a mí.
Because I think she's a very similar person to me.
En primer lugar, estaba también fascinada con Cuba y los bailarines cubanos.
First of all, she was also fascinated by Cuba and Cuban dances.
Pero yo pienso que en un sentido absolutamente emocional.
But I think she was so in a totally emotional sense.
Jan camina por Cuba y todo el tiempo pienso yo que se siente en casa.
Jan, when she's walking around Cuba, I think she feels at home all the time.
Y pienso que hay una conexión directa en la manera de vivir la danza y de vivir la vida.
And I think we have a connection in the way we experience dance and life itself.
Pienso que lo más importante para mí de todo esto, de todas estas colaboraciones, del trabajo que hacemos,
The most important thing to me in all these collaborations and work we do
tiene que ver con encontrar el sentido de vivir y ser feliz compartiendo.
has to do with finding the meaning of living and the meaning of sharing.
A veces coreografiando, a veces ensayando, a veces compartiendo una cerveza.
Sometimes doing a choreography, sometimes just rehearsing, sometimes just having a beer.
Pero lo que está claro es que todas las personas que están aquí,
But what's clear is that everyone around
Gio,
with us tonight,
Gio ha hecho un poco como de, yo diría como estos maestros de ceremonia.
so Gio was sort of an MC, a master of ceremony.
Que va juntando personas parecidas.
That is linking up people, similar people with each other.
Y cuando tú encuentras este tipo de gente por el mundo, muy rápidamente te reconoces y todo es fácil.
And when you meet that sort of person in the world, very quickly you identify yourself and everything flows, everything is easy.
Y eso es lo que pasa. Cuando conocí a Jan, enseguida dijimos, queremos trabajar juntas.
And this is what happened. When I met Jan, we immediately felt we wanted to work together.
Y a pesar de tener todas las condiciones en contra,
And despite having all the odds against us,
era la primera compañía de danza contemporánea o proyecto de danza contemporánea entre una compañía cubana y una compañía americana que trabajaban juntas y que se presentaban.
it was the first contemporary dance project between two companies that worked together and presented their work in
Esto
both
es muy
countries.
importante porque eso sucedió y a pesar de que no tuvo mucha repercusión, sucedió y fue algo verdaderamente importante, donde Gio rápidamente quiso formar parte y formó parte.
And this is something very important that happened, and Gio wanted to take part, and he indeed took part in the end.
Y cuando me preguntan acerca de este tipo de cosas, de colaboraciones, de cómo surgen, me es muy difícil explicar de una manera más intelectual cómo surgen los proyectos o por qué. Simplemente yo pienso que hay personas que se conectan y de ahí empieza algo, llamemos mágico, uno empieza a hablar, empieza a relacionarse y empieza a necesitar compartir. Sorry.
And when I'm asked about these sort of processes, I think things flow very naturally. And ¿qué dices al final?
Bueno, nada, que es muy fácil la conexión entre personas que ven la vida de una manera.
So when things flow like that, things are very easy in collaborations.
La danza es una excusa.
So dance is an excuse.
Yo pienso que son relaciones humanas.
In fact, it's about human relations.
Y Cuba, yo siento que Cuba está ahí tan cerca, ¿no? De ustedes. Estamos cerca. La danza es una posibilidad de viaje inmediato.
And in that sense, Cuba is very close to you guys in the US, and dance is a possibility to travel.
Gio, I think you define cultural diplomacy. Your work, everything you've done over the years, really, it's just amazing what you've done.
No, Jen, thank you. I just have to say that for me, being Cuban and going back 25 years ago for the first time and reconnecting with my culture, my roots, again, I wanted to find how could I share this with the rest of the world. It was such a gift to know about my heritage that I had I wasn't aware of. And the only way I could do that was by what I do best, is connecting people, a facilitator of sorts. And that just took on, and each day led me to the next. And I found these wonderful people with the most incredible talent. And I just wanted to share it with the world, which leads us to where we're at today. Simple as that. I'm passionate about my country. I'm passionate about our culture, and I'm passionate about relations. So thank you. And again, it's been easy, and I hope I get another 20 years to do this. So thank you.
I'd love to pick up right where you just were, Susanna and Jan, knowing that that collaboration was performed both in Havana and Chicago. Were there any differences in the reactions from the audiences or the conversations that you had in each of those cities? Or were they similar? Like, could you feel a different energy when you brought it to each of those two places?
Well, I can just speak about, especially in Cuba, when we performed that moment of the two companies coming together. In Cuba, it had a whole other meaning, much more emotional. It was very important. You could feel it in the room. We had great response in Chicago too, but it just was different because of the experience of people who are watching it. So, yeah.
Yo pienso que independientemente de la importancia que tuvo el hecho de que era la primera vez que algo así sucedía,
So irrespective of the importance of the fact that this was the first time that something like that happened,
lo increíble fue que el teatro estaba lleno de gente.
what was amazing is that the venue was full of people.
Gente, yo diría un poco curiosa,
Curious people.
que en ningún momento se convirtió en una noche en la que ellos querían valorar la coreografía o lo que estaba sucediendo más allá digamos, del espectáculo, si estaba bien o estaba mal. Era simplemente...
No querían hacer eso.
No, que el público simplemente se puso a disfrutar sin hacer ningún análisis.
So the audience basically wasn't there to analyze and criticize what was going on. They just enjoyed events.
Y muy que sabían que formaban parte de algo muy especial aquella noche.
And they were very emotional because they knew that they were taking part in a very special thing.
Porque no nos olvidemos que Cuba es un país con unas características en la cual hay muchísimos bailarines.
Because we shouldn't forget that Cuba is a country characterized by the fact that there are many dancers.
Hay muchos artistas.
And many artists.
Pero hay muchos que se van del país.
But many of them are actually leaving the country.
Y algunos de ellos, algunos cubanos, que trabajan con Jan, Maray, Víctor, ella habló.
So some of these Cubans, among which those that work with Jan, like Maray or Victor,
regresaron por primera vez a bailar a su país después de muchos años.
We're returning to dance to their country on that occasion for the very first time in many years.
Parte del público los recordaba todavía y querían volver a verlos.
And part of the audience was still remembering them and wanted to see them again.
Así que se convirtió en una noche súper emocionante, donde realmente formamos parte de este primer y único evento.
So that turned the event in a very emotional evening in which we took part.
And it was very important, for everyone in my company at that time to perform there. Mariah and Victor and Jesse and all the others Michelle Rodriguez, and anyway, it was quite an amazing time, and it also was just very fulfilling for me because there were times when I didn't know if it was going to happen, and Gio would have to say to me, Jan, just you have to believe. So we believed, and in the end it came through. But it was a lot of times it was on a wing and a prayer. I mean, 2 weeks before we did the show in Chicago the first time, we didn't know if the visas were going to come through. We were advertising the show, and I was just keeping my fingers crossed that we were going to be able to do it. Of course, we were there. We would do our part, but to bring, DanzAbierta, that was a whole other experience.
I want to move over to Isabel. We talked about this a little bit at the top as we defined your work as dance theater, but I think that means a lot of collaboration in your work with scenic designers, costume designers, composers, even with, I know you're interested in architecture as well. So I just want to dig a little deeper and ask you to share with us, in a more practical sense, how do you approach those collaborations and how do they advance your work?
Como tu trabajo es muy teatral y colaboras mucho con diseñadores, con escenografistas, todo eso, músicos, los bailarines, claro. Sí. ¿Puede elaborar un poco sobre ese tipo de colaboración que usted hace en su trabajo?
Sí, por supuesto, hay muchas colaboraciones con diseñadores de luces, con gente que hace vestuario, con músicos, con cantantes de ópera, en fin. Me muevo por diferentes formas, diferentes maneras de hacer arte, porque eso pienso que complementa el trabajo que nosotros hacemos. Y los bailarines han crecido de tal manera que ya son maestros, ya son coreógrafos, hacen sus pequeñas cosas, pero finalmente van a ser una gran escuela. Yo quería decir a Gio que él sabe que a mí me gusta mucho improvisar y crear espacios. Cuando él me dice, vamos a trabajar en este lugar, ¿tú no pudieras hacer algo aquí, allá? Digo, pero...
So Isabel says that, of course, her collaborations, and she works extensively with lighting. The first persons she mentioned were lighting designers, wardrobe people, graphics, people in music, singers, and they all add to the dance. And then
we have actually done many events in Havana in the most particular places, and she's been able to create that's what she's referring to, some very odd places.
Yes, Gio has had Isabel create performances in spaces like museums, courtyards of museums, and magical places. And Isabel's always up for the task. So she's like, she can create wherever she needs to.
A mí me encanta los retos. Eso de trabajar en una pared, en una puerta, trabajar en un pequeño espacio que Gio me dice, quisieras algo aquí. Es un lugar muy difícil, pero yo lo hago con gusto.
She says that sometimes the spaces are so small or restrictive, but she loves the challenge and she does it with, great pride in her work, and she's very happy to do it.
Entonces, un poco el conocimiento de la gente que viene y nos mira y también el desarrollo de los bailarines a partir de estas experiencias son muy, muy interesantes.
So a lot of her company is, you know, dancers that are mature and they're teaching and doing other things as well. And so from a point of view, you know, they bring a lot of that to her company.
But Retazos has a festival in Old Havana too, so they know how to work in open spaces. Would you like to talk a little bit about
Isabel,
that?
Gio estaba mencionando que ustedes hacen su festival en la Vieja Habana, que por sí tiene espacios a veces un poco comprimidos y pequeños.
Sí, nosotros hacemos un festival que en este momento es muy grande, aunque este año por la pandemia hemos tenido que parar este nuevo año, pero en general yo empecé haciendo esto con 6, 7 personas, entre esos Miguel, y en este momento hemos tenido 1,300 personas trabajando en las calles, en diferentes espacios y lugares. Y por eso mi trabajo con Gio a mí me gusta, porque él me dice, este es un reto, ¿qué te parece en este lugar? O este árbol, o esta, no sé, al lado de esta mesa, o al lado de esta escalera. Y entonces un trabajo muy, muy interesante. Se vuelve muy interesante y creo que la experiencia de la gente que ve lo que hacemos es especial. Y nosotros para nosotros mismos y para ellos.
Isabel was, you know, Gio had mentioned that they do an annual festival in Old Havana. And when they started, they actually started with 3 people on the team. And now it's over 1,000 people that, even though this year the festival did not take place because of the pandemic, they are expecting next year to be able to be back on. But she says it doesn't matter if it's working with a team of 3,000 or collaborating with 1,000 people to do a job. She likes a challenge. So she's always up for something, you know, wacky, different.
Sorry. Well, I just want to say that that's a theme that came up last night too, sort of that resilience and appreciation of a challenge and seeing that a challenge as an opportunity. I'm curious, Miguel, working in Sweden, if you have that same sort of, yeah, I can do a show in a courtyard. I can do a show here, there, anywhere. Like, is that something that interests you in your work as well?
Well, I would say that one of the biggest challenges we have here is the weather when it comes to performing outdoors. But certainly we share the interest with Retazos of trying to reach audiences in new ways. Trying to get away just from the performance spaces, like traditional performance spaces, but try to actually reach audiences in new ways, and not necessarily only new spaces or open spaces, but actually try to see if we can open the creative process in different ways through workshops or open rehearsals. Just try to connect with regular audiences. And what I mean by that is people that maybe don't necessarily have the knowledge that a dance audience could have. And for us, that's a very meaningful experience, that what we do is something that is accessible for people. That is, you don't need to have a lot of education in dance to get something out of it. But the dance is so close to everybody. Everybody that has a body dances every day somehow. And that's very much what we're actually working on right now with our company here. And Retazos has been a great school, because they've been very engaged in working with the community, working with young audiences, so with children and youth, and working a lot with international exchange. So for me, it's been a school, actually, working with my mother and Retazos. But the question was, can you repeat it to see if I'm on the subject, Ross?
Yeah, I mean, I think that covered it. I was curious. You know, your mom talked about having this desire to put dance in a lot of different spaces and make it, you know, public and in museums and all that. And I'm curious if that's something you are drawn to as well.
Yeah, I would say that, and that's something that I can see that what the other person was talking about. Sorry, I forgot her name. Dance in Cuba, to be a dancer in Cuba is something totally different than being a dancer in Sweden. In Cuba, it's like you're a movie star somehow. And in Sweden, you don't have the same reaction. You don't have the same acceptance somehow. But if you can work through that, and if you can actually touch people and reach people through dance, they discover that there's a lot of potential, and there's a lot of experiences, and a lot of people can communicate through movement. And so this I would say is the challenge for me here, is how to make it more accessible somehow.
Are the dancers that you work with in your company primarily Swedish, or do you have dancers coming from around the world in your company?
We have like two lines of work. We work a lot with children and youth, and that is ongoing. The whole year is touring a lot, and that we do mostly with Swedish dancers. And then we have another line of cooperations with Cuba. We do like one co-production a year with Retazos, and it's a bigger format, maybe 8 people, 10 people. And usually that we do with Cuban dancers. So I have like the two parallel lines going on. And interesting enough, the children shows and the grown-up shows, they feed each other a lot, actually. And one idea that I'm working with kids, actually find a place to continue developing into the work with adult shows. So it's a good combination somehow, Cuba, Sweden, and also children and youth work with grown-up work. Yeah.
Great, thanks. It was mentioned a little bit ago that things right now are being postponed or canceled or moved to digital platforms because of the global pandemic that we're all living through. So I think it's important to acknowledge that that sort of hangs over all of us and over this conversation, which is really particularly difficult for dancers because the work of dance is physical and it's present and it's with the body. But I'm wondering how this has impacted your work, and this is really for any or all of you. Have you found ways to adapt? Have you found access to new collaborations that maybe you wouldn't have had access to as we move more digitally? And sort of, yeah, what has the last 9 or so months looked like for you as a dance maker? Susanna, maybe you want to start.
Yeah, for me it was a time to rest, think, to read, and to prepare new creations, of course. No? Bueno, a ver,
Shall I translate?
Sorry. Our life is always, we are doing a lot of things at the same time. And for me, it was a time to think about the new projects. And when you are a creation, you have two parts. La primera parte, first part, es la creación en casa, ¿no? Es decidir qué vas a hacer, qué es lo que encontrar el sentido de tu próxima creación.
It's creation at home, is to decide what you're going to do and finding the meaning of what you're doing.
Normalmente la vida va tan rápido que yo estoy creando al mismo tiempo en mi mente y en el local.
Usually life goes so fast that I'm creating at the same time at home and in the rehearsal venue.
Y quizás ahora pues he podido dedicar un poco más de tiempo a investigar yo.
And lately I've been able to allocate a little bit more time to investigation.
Y a descubrir que en mi casa se podía bailar.
And discover that I could dance at home.
Ya. A descubrir que el cuerpo puede moverse de otra forma cuando estás en un espacio pequeño.
And discovering that the body can move in a different fashion when you are in a small, reduced space.
Y seguir viviendo, porque pienso que todas las experiencias son interesantes para poder crear y poder seguir haciendo cosas.
Because I think that all the experiences are important to create and to continue doing things.
Yo soy una persona muy positiva.
I'm a very positive person.
Y pienso que algo bueno de todo esto saldrá.
And I think that something good is going to come out of this.
Thank you. I'll go to Miguel. You're unmuted. So how has this pandemic impacted your work?
Well, I'm still a little bit like, I don't know how to handle this in many ways. But I have also used the time actually to reflect about the work, to reflect a little bit about what it means, what it could mean for other people, what it actually means for me, and how that has been changed also over time, and how do I want to continue to move forward with what I do. Not necessarily how I'm going to do it now that we have this situation, but more in a deeper way. What does it mean for me? What do I think it could mean for the people around me and for my community? And so it's been a useful time somehow. It gave me that opportunity to think. And now how I'm going to go about it, if I use the internet and things like that, I'm not being so concerned with that really at the moment. I also think there's something good will come out of this, and I'm not worried because I don't have access to the channels that I usually have. I just use the time in other ways. Yeah.
Great. And Isabel, to you, how was Retazos and you as an individual responding to the pandemic?
¿Cómo ha impactado la pandemia en ti y en el trabajo de tu compañía? Esa es la pregunta de Ross.
La compañía se detuvo en el tiempo porque han sido 9 meses muy especiales con la idea de que en Cuba la pandemia no llegue realmente a momentos muy difíciles como está pasando en otros lugares. Pues pasamos tiempos bastante encerrados.
She says that in her company hit a pause because the concern in Cuba is that they not have the same degree of pandemic, and so things have sort of slowed down, and they're shut in.
Yo he estado trabajando en algo que tiene que ver con la pandemia, empezando por esta gran tragedia de tantos millones que han muerto y cómo estamos intentando volver a la vida y volver al sentido mágico de la vida, lo más importante, el afecto entre los seres.
She's been working actually and thinking about doing a piece or how to evolve the whole idea of all these millions of people who have passed on from the pandemic, and how do we go back to normal and bring joy back in our lives.
También los bailarines hemos estado en contacto con ellos y se han hecho algunos videos en casa, que ha sido interesante su experiencia. Y creo que eso nos va a aportar a la nueva obra que vamos a comenzar a hacer.
So the actual dancers have been doing some video work from their homes, shorts and things of the dance, which they hope to incorporate into this broader piece that they're evolving.
Yo quería decir una sola cosa más, porque no quiero excederme en hablar demasiado. Es decirle a Gio que ha sido una experiencia muy interesante trabajar con él, que si le hemos aportado a su sueño, que ya llevan 10 años en este sueño del Copperbridge, pues me alegra haber aportado algo para que su fundación funcione. Y esperamos que esto no se detenga, que vamos a pelear por la vida, vamos a seguir luchando, que creo que es lo más importante en este momento.
Isabel wanted to thank Gio and say that she hopes that their work together has helped the foundation grow, and hopes to continue to work together and grow as we come out of this pandemic and find joy again in the world. And she said that was it.
Muchas gracias, con mucho amor. Gracias.
That does take us just about to time, and really, I think that's a beautiful way of ending all. From the three of you, just really showing yet again the resilience and the strength that dancers all around the world and in Cuba bring to challenges every day. So I thank you all for that, the adapting and the reflecting that you're doing. And again, I'll thank Gio and Copperbridge for hosting this, and to all of the panelists for participating, and everyone else who tuned in. Again, this is one of my favorite things that I get to do. So thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very
Thank you.
Thank you.
much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.